It looks like today we have three donations from people who have given in the past, and it's really telling me something when you return like that and keep your support up. Much appreciated. It just coincidentally, one of you is the person bringing the question today. So, David DRA, thank you again. Nice, very very nice. Multiple time donor. Theodora, Richard, excellent. Thank you very much, guys. All of you have given before. Really appreciate it. And yeah, it's not like we're killing it here. So we're keeping our, I think we're just keeping up right now. So it's hugely appreciated whenever they come in. So thank you, guys. And I'll get right to the discussion. So I'm actually pleased that Richard is the guy asking the question. You've asked a lot of questions, Richard, and you've kept up with donations. I appreciate that very much. I don't, by the way, I don't tie them to each other, even the littlest bit. I don't think about it. I just want the questions. But when people can afford it, and I know that some of you can hardly afford it, and they're doing it. So it's when you can, when you give and you can, it's even more amazing. Um, Richard says, this one left me wondering what your thoughts are concerning Velasquez painting such a complex work as Las Meninas or the Spinners. And that last one must have been, I actually don't remember what that was. I apologize for not looking it up to see which one you were looking at, Richard. But uh, so that's too bad. But anyway, you'll still pick up what I'm talking about. Would you say he had the entire ensemble in front of him each time he worked on the painting? Or would it be necessary only for the start? Could he then complete the painting with parts missing, relying on the memory of the whole and perhaps a final shot with the entire cast in place to pull it together? Yeah, those are good questions. And I think now that you're talking about it, I think this must be the one about Sorolla, the impressionist, imaginative impressionist. So, yeah, this is one of those chances to get us to not so much try to make it uh, uh, what shall we say, purists based on Monet out of Velasquez. And on the other hand, by the way, Sorolla being of the same vintage, a Spaniard background, a Spanish background, the he was undoubtedly close in understanding, had reason to really know, if you like, from the inside what Velasquez was up to on levels that possibly the rest of us especially in the States, may not have run into if you haven't traveled there. But if you spent your life there, undoubtedly you'd get more out of it. And you might find more writing, you might find more conversation in old Spanish papers, who knows what. So, but here's our question though: would you say you had the? So this is a complex pictures, and that's my title is complex impressionism. And so, would he have the whole painting in front of him the whole time? Would that be necessary? Or would it be necessary only for the start? Could he then complete the painting with parts missing, relying on the memory of the whole and perhaps a final shot with the entire cast in place to pull it together? By the way, my suggestion on that last point is if it isn't pulled together already before you ever get to that point, you got a problem. But you'll see, I think, what I'm talking about. So we have, I better make sure my laser is working too. Oh, look at that. So we have, this is out of place. Let's see what I've done now. All right, let's start with it then. So we have Monet, and that's where that comes from about, he'd go out to the same exact location and he'd try to pick the same exact, or roughly the same exact time of day, or at least time of sun, which of course the day would be changing a little bit, meaning the sun is moving, of course, seasonally. And he would paint from the same spot at the same time of day, and it might last, according to the stories, he might last 20 minutes, and then he'd quit. So he was really into painting what he saw in front of him, um, exactly as near to exactly. It's wonderful stuff about humans, what we do, but as near to exactly as he could, uh, day after day. So he's reproducing it, but he wanted that minute, that 20-minute segment or something, where the changes were very insignificant. Most people, I don't think, hold quite to that standard. But it does complicate things for you. These are complicated pictures, by the way. I don't mean to say they have people in them, but pictures with this many different colors, and water, clouds, all that sort of stuff. It's fairly complicated. Hillside. Uh, Now, it's not complicated as a bunch of people, but I think you think differently from what Impressionists do if you think that all pictures aren't the same. There's a level of complexity that's inevitable. But when you see a bunch of people, like an interior, a bunch of stuff around a room, you suddenly think it's more complicated. I'm not sure I agree that that's the case, but let's just truck from here, and we're going to look at the Velázquez, this Las Meninas, which is the one that Stevenson in the Velázquez book talks about first and most, probably. But I think the reason for that is because of the way he's painted areas of this painting, like this especially. And the grand ensemble has this feeling of unity that's characteristic of an interior painted from life, all of a piece. But one of the things I've said about this one from the very beginning is that certain parts of it, like the dog down in the foreground, certain parts of this thing look like they were possibly even painted beforehand and brought in. This dog is painted from outlines. You can see this is considerably more suggestive of Lost and Found and the visual order. Dog really doesn't look like that. He looks like old Velázquez, and which tells me that it wasn't painted at the same time. And of course, the dog isn't going to hold still. You're going to have all sorts of issues anyway. I've done that and had that problem. It's just an interesting problem. So, yeah, so already I think he's doing something like that. And you take a whole bunch of people like that, it's going to be a rare day when you can get them all in the same place. And this picture, I don't know how many days, how many hours, I don't know any of those things, or how much time over years it might have even taken. And I'm not suggesting anything. I don't have any idea. It's just that we know, as painters, that some of these things, portraits, in particular group portraits, can take a long time because of the what do you call it, the logistics, the inability to keep people together. So, and in the most part, and I'm sure in any group painting that he would have done previously, Velázquez, he wouldn't have had all the players like the Surrender of Breda. He wouldn't have had all these people, the topers. He wouldn't have had them all in the same room. So he knew full well how to do that. He knew it better than we do, that we who are raised as Impressionists. Gamma would say better than he knew, and he paints, pictures that are pieced together. But Velázquez was good at it, and understood that. So he already had that skill. And what would be the difference? It'd be much like I've talked about the El Jaleo for Sargent. You're taking a different way of looking at nature. And you're transforming, instead of doing it piece by piece and piecing it together into an interior previously painted, perhaps you would be, well, both cases actually, that wouldn't be true. You probably would have painted as much of the interior as you could before you put your people in there. Although in the El Jaleo, that's a little bit different because there's so little background, I mean. But nevertheless, his El Jaleo does look like it was pieced together more than this one. And we still think of El Jaleo as in the Impressionist family, in the Impressionist kind of thinking. But it's not. It's not a visual impression. It's just painterly painting, or the tonalist, tone-based painting, painterly painting. So when you look at the dog here, when you look at other stuff by Velázquez, which I'm not going to look at, you'll see the tendency in his previous work to beautifully cut out the shape, beautifully model. As Degas would say, drawing is what happens between the contours. That whole approach. But I hold this one up as another model, possibly the superior model, where it does look more like he had the entire thing in front of him, as insignificant part. And some of the reasons is because of the way he addresses for example, the background characters. Some of these characters on the left, it's more perfunctory. It's more essential. It's more getting at the essential point. so that if the model has to disappear, or so that you can see them, so you can get the essential point there and have it in conversation with other points and other effects in the rest of the painting. That's more typical of what we've learned in the Impressionist mind since then. And but in the foreground of this one, you can see that this stuff has this look. This foreground, literally the foreground plane, has this look that these guys might have actually been painted separately. Studies may have been done and brought in. I'm not saying that's the case. Not even saying it's the case. He obviously could simply have done, like on this one, he just simply looks like he spent more time. Not so much less time on this, but here again, a painter will take whatever he's got, and if he's going to do if he can have the interior and a nice piece of still life, the temptation will be to work it up. And my guess is he had the studio, a nice piece of still life, meaning the spinning wheel, and he had this sitter. Then he could get lots and lots of hours with him. So some of these things are the coincidences of execution. But I'm with Richard that this thing was probably not done all of a piece, except for the initial, some sort of an initial lay-in, possibly. It's with all this stuff we're just guessing, and I'm guessing based on what I've done myself, what I find you must do. So I don't know what else to say about that, Richard. But the idea that you're bringing bringing them in all together on the last day. The fact is, when you bring a new person and somebody who hasn't been there for a while, and you put them down again, say it was this person on the side. These two guys probably, I'm guessing they might have been servants, or even conceivably could have been his wife, or somebody they hired as a model who was just there all the time. But my guess is, though, that any one of these people could have been brought in, the painting already being a good likeness in its major relationships. I'm talking about this light to this, to all the other elements in this picture that would have been the setup of the painting, and the big color, the big tones, the great value relations, the great masses, the major colors and their relation to each other. All that stuff would have been there, so that all that would have been necessary was to bring the person in, and that person, then all you'd have to do is relate that person, as it were, impressionistically, just relate that person in situ, as if they were already part of this thing, and all you have to do is relate their colors, their light effect, and all that stuff to the other things in the room. You couldn't do that if a lot of stuff in the room was causing a disturbance, but you'd still probably be in a proximal rightness. All right. I'm doing this with Tarbell because of these pictures that directly remind me of Velasquez like nobody else in the Boston School does. I'm talking about, women in interiors for one thing, and just the idea of a large room. I mean, the one on the right does strongly remind you of the rooms with the high ceilings, and these guys weren't at all averse to messing around with the Vermeer experience, and this is a version of the Velasquez experience. But this is where you can see the characters all around being treated in all at once, all over the place at once, all brought up together, kind of a model, which is what you saw in that previous Velasquez. So the whole painting is coming forward at the same time. And yet, it's undoubtedly, so that would have been done in a lay-in, and we've shown you the lay-ins before, and I found a few more lay-ins by Tarbell, by the way. We've shown you the lay-ins, and if you blow your eye at these, you'll know what the lay-ins look like, but you'll know the canvas was covered in the first day. And I would say or so, but likely the first day, where you have these major masses of dark spotted around, and you have the location and some significant drawing of this. You have all the exits probably fixed, and some of the key lights fixed. I sometimes wish I had taken my interior, taken shots of it piece by piece to show you that, but because this is so similar, at least the tabletop forces you into that, whether you like to be there or not. But that whole thing would have been laid in, and at that point, if the big relationship's right, and I'm the man who's saying, look, I want this thing to look like this. I really can now see, now that I've laid it in, I can see that this is actually very much what I'm trying to get. And now it's a question of bringing it in, bringing it home, reeling it in, or bringing it home. So once you know that's all beautiful, then you just you might have them from one more sitting and really make sure the color relations are really all that you want them to be, and that sort of thing. But then after that, you would be working piecemeal with these individuals as you could get them, and there'd be no harm done to anything. It would still continue. Now, you could say, in the purest sense of the word, then that wouldn't be Monet Impressionism, but it's still Impressionism in the sense that all you're after is the unity of the visual impression, which you would already have established in your start. So when these other guys come in, it would be only to follow up, and then of course you'd have to check all those things. I mean, to follow up, to tie it on to what's already there, to improve on it from what's already there. And I always tell you that I start with the center of interest, or the part that has the greatest dominance. When it comes to doing that piecemeal, doing an area at a time, you go to the area that has the greatest dominance and really power that up, because of its importance, the important role it plays in the placement on the page, compositionally and all that stuff. So yeah, so that's that, and the same thing would be true here. So if you blurred your eyes, you'd see that he would have gotten the lights over here. He would have gotten the major masses here would have had this thing. He would have had these darks, and certainly this major mass here. Some of these might have been handled more perfunctorily, although that edge probably would have been there. I'm talking about in the lay-in. And then these guys do have the look of having had more work done to them. On the other hand, he's maintained the unity of the development of the picture. And if he hasn't, to the degree that one hasn't done that, if it's going to be a failure, you want it to be in the center. You want your center to be overworked, if anything, and you can understand that pictorially. So, yeah. I don't know if you're following all this stuff. Richard, I think you know most of this stuff. Now, I'm picking this one because I'm thinking Monet again. This picture also looks like it wasn't done in lots and lots of sittings. But in some ways, just judging by the amount of tree work, I'm wondering if he set up the composition and then had these guys come in, or had them maybe in for a few minutes, set up the trees a little bit, and then work them more, and then he could have had the kids one at a time. But this is a fairly modest effort. It doesn't. I don't remember looking at. I'm not sure I could tell you how many skins it has. Is what I wanted to say. But this could have been done either way. But it has the feeling of possibly being done at least in in a couple shots with the people all together each time. And I'm saying that for a couple of reasons. One is that there's Mom, and she's got her hands full, and this group of kids probably isn't going to be manageable endlessly, and it's going to be probably pretty difficult for Tarbell to put one kid in there. Now he might have been able to get more time with one, but as you can see again, he's kept the development unified. They've all come up together, and as I said again, with the exception of the trees, which have a funny different look about them, but that might just be the way it did appear. They do look a bit more worked in a way that may seem less than unified in terms of expressing a general impression. But that's one of those things where Gamma would speak rightly when he says you weren't there, and you don't know whether that's what was going on or not, but it may have been. So, Richard, let's go back and review and see what the question was again, and and see if I've missed anything. So, complex works. Would you say he had the entire ensemble in front of him each time he worked on the painting? I doubt it, and it's possible he didn't even have them all at the beginning, but he likely did. On the other hand, the first one doesn't strike me as the most impressive composition I've ever seen, so maybe he didn't at that. Or would it be necessary only for the start? Well, that's the key word, and you really are onto it. The start is the thing. So if you can really get yourself off, which I think you'll find that most Impressionists are, I better not say that, but just the Boston School thing seems to be, whenever you see a start, you seem to be them getting at all the major stuff, and the composition is well set in that first day. So it does appear to me that it would have been likely that would have happened in this picture, but not necessarily only based on that one idea that the composition, at least of the first one, Las Meninas, that's this one here. So there's Las Meninas, and Las Meninas has that feeling. You may like the composition. I'm not a fan of this composition, and for several good reasons, but typically his compositions are better than that. But in any case, this, and by the way, when I say composition, in this case, I really do mean the figured groupings. They look like they were, the spotting thing, the distribution of the lights and all that sort of thing, it does look quite good, very impressionistically good. So he might have been being, as it were, neglectful of that stuff, but the other stuff. But it isn't particularly beautiful, that in terms of its grouping. Whereas the other one, the next one, actually feels much more plausible in the design. But again, remember that this kind of design, you don't want to, I have to be careful because there's always the two elements. But one of the elements that has historically been done up to this time is that you're worried about your figure grouping, and not just how they tell the story, but how they display, how they interplay across the floor as if they were 3D. So, but this one impresses me as a composition more than the other. That's all I'm saying about that. So if I could get back to Richard's point here, could he then complete the painting with parts missing, relying on the memory of the whole, and perhaps a final shot with the entire cast in place? Well, the last part there would be really nice, but it isn't automatic and it isn't necessarily needed. If there's some problem that he can't solve, my guess is he would bring the cast back together if he could, if there was some issue. On the other hand, when you're an impressionist, one of the problems with bringing the cast back together is a temptation to explore something new that you just found in there, and the thing could go on indefinitely. But again, I don't know how long these did take. You've heard enough from me. Richard, thank you very much again for your donation, and to Theodora and David DRA. And I'm very pleased that you're getting something out of these things, and I hope this is of some benefit too. All right, and I'll see you in the next one. Sorry about the delays in the last one, but that's just the way it is some days. But I hope you'll go back and have a look at that one, the discussion about the, what the heck did I write about? Oh, it's been a long day. All right. Anyway, the last blog on there, on the group page of the Impressionism studio. I don't know where my memory is. I did that today, but it's been, as I said, it's been a long day. I'm waiting for it to come back into my head. All right. So thank you for your donations. Thank you for your contributions that way, but also in terms of the comments and the sharing and the subscribing. Much appreciated. When things don't come in, do look at the group page of the Impressionism Studio, and I try to put these out on Instagram and other places. The blogs that I put out when I can't get something done. So do look in those places. All right, thank you all very much. See you next time.